Welcome back to day 2 of Search Engine Strategies. I'm Chris Sherman. I'm executive editor of SearchEngineLand.com, and with me is Matt Cutts, who goes by the rather unassuming title of Google Engineer, which really kind of belies, I think, Matt's role within Google. Matt, let's basically just get started. I'm curious. You went to school on the East Coast of the U.S., and you studied computer graphics, computer imagery.
Yep.
How did you make it to the West Coast and get involved with Google?
Can people hear me okay? Yeah. Excellent. It's sort of a funny story. We actually eloped to join Google, my wife and I. We were scheduled to get married in June 2000, and we were in the middle of job interviews. You had to take a couple outside courses at UNC Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina. So I took courses in information and library science because that was as close as I could get to computer science at grad school. And both courses were talking about search engines. And at that time, Google was just far and away better than any other search engine. And as a grad student, I used it all the time. So I wrote to them and I just said, how much do you guys pay? And they wrote back and they were very nice. And they said, well, we don't really disclose salaries, unless you're in active negotiations. And I said, okay, that's fine. Went back to work. And about 3 or 4 days later, I got an email and said, well, would you like to be in active negotiations? So went through the interview process, flew out, had a lot of fun, talked to them. It seemed like a really great company. And my wife made the really wonderful decision of, okay, let's elope. Let's leave grad school, quit the PhD, move across the country, do a honeymoon, get married, all in the space of like a month. And so started at Google in January 2000.
Yeah, well, now, is it a requirement at Google that you don't finish your graduate degree? It seems like
it's not a requirement. There are a lot of people at Google who have PhDs. And so some people have described it as a cross between grad school and a startup. So it's that sort of environment where you're not averse to making money, but you'd also like to make an impact on the world and make a difference. So it's a very nice environment to start in.
Now, you're the head of the web spam team at Google, too. Take us through an average day, or is there an average day in your life at Google?
Yeah, I'm probably a little unlike some engineers in that a lot of my time is spent on email, analysis, meeting with people, sort of spotting new trends. So, for example, earlier today I got an email from one of my engineers talking about a certain new twist in Chinese spam. It's more of an old technique and people have tried out a new way to do it. So what we do on an average day is typically, look at bad search results that we find in various ways, look at spam reports, look at, all the different ways we have of gathering feedback. And we try to assess and say, okay, what's the worst thing? What do we tackle next? And it is a little like keeping a bunch of plates spinning all at once because you've got to prioritize, by the amount of impact, and you've got to say, what can we do that will help the most amount of users? But in return, it's also a very rewarding job. So it is a lot of fun to work in.
It's interesting because I guess to a certain extent, spam is in the eye of the beholder. Some people are very well intentioned, but they put out, content for whatever reason is really by definition spam. How do you draw the line? I mean, are there gray areas? How do you actually say, no, this really isn't intentional spam, or yes, this is, and how do you handle those situations?
Yeah, that can be tough. Typically, one litmus test that we use is the technique. So if somebody's doing a particular thing using sneaky JavaScript redirects, even if they're trying to do it for good purposes, if they've got keywords that the users don't see, that the search engines do, and then they redirect you to a different site completely, we go ahead and call that a spamming technique. And you can talk until you're blue in the face about how you're really doing this for the benefit of users, but the person in the seat beside you might also think they're doing something for the benefit of users. And so the litmus test in some ways is the techniques that are used. But also, we look at how happy users are. So in a lot of ways, spam you can almost define as noise, right? Noise is what you don't want from your signal. In the same way, spam is what users don't want. And so you can divide things into a couple different categories. There's off-topic spam. Off-topic is you type in your name and you get porn, right? That's the worst kind of spam. Nobody likes that. I've never met anybody who will really admit to doing that, although there are certainly people who try to do that. And it's really not in anybody's interest, and a lot of people help us to get rid of off-topic spam. And then you start to get to, on-topic spam, which is more like you make a cookie-cutter site that maybe doesn't add a lot of value, and if I do a search and I get 50 sites that are all exactly the same thing, and there's no real difference between them, that's really bad for the user. So we sort of look at the diversity in the set of results, and we say, okay, is the user getting additional value add compared to just some other random cookie cutter site? So there definitely are shades, and some things are more serious and some things are less serious.